Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jay Bagley, part of Vance Center, Temple University, String Theory University. And I'm here today with Dr. Karl Morriss. He's our AI specialist and also running for Congress. But he has some very important information for us because we know that AI is coming and it's coming fast. So I'd like to ask you a question. What's going on, or what's happening with the world of AI?
Well, what we've been seeing over the last few months, I would say, is a serious acceleration of the capabilities and the use of AI in different industries. I think maybe a couple years ago, when we really started to see this technology first being introduced, even though this came in around 2003, but by 2004, people really started to get their hands on it. I think we all saw the potential and where it could go in the future, but I don't think anyone was really ready for just how quickly this technology would develop, how quickly it would be enhanced, and how many companies and services would be offering AI-based tools, as well as integrating these tools into their line of businesses. So over the past few months, I think we've just been seeing an acceleration. And this means that some of the disruptions, some of the transformations that we anticipated we would see in society, we're already starting to see the effects of that. We could go across different areas. We now see AI being used in healthcare. The government has started a pilot program at the beginning of 2026 utilizing artificial intelligence for pre-authorization in Medicaid. We see ICE, which has been in the news a lot recently. They're now being directed to areas to perform raids using AI-based tools developed by Palantir, a company that has multi-billion-dollar contracts with the government. They're using Medicaid data, passing that through different AI models and being instructed where they should actually go to find people that they can arrest and deport. So, it's almost straight out of an Orwellian novel, quite frankly. And this is just what the government is doing. What we're seeing over the past few months, for example, is an acceleration of job losses being triggered by companies employing automation, employing AI, and certainly there are other externalities, other economic factors, but they will all tell you in their reports that automation and AI is one of the big drivers for some of the layoffs that we're seeing in the job market. And we know that this is actually going to accelerate as more companies start to use this technology.
So what kind of impact do you feel that it's going to have on the jobs and economy?
Okay, so this is going to be perhaps the biggest transformative issue we see with AI, at least the ones that will be very obvious to us. We've had inflection points before, these huge technological leaps, where whether you want to look at the interstate highway or train system, airlines, the internet, we've seen a lot of times where some technological leap has taken place that changes the way that society operates. But historically, what these new technologies have done is either allowed us to move people faster than we had before or move information faster than we have before. But they've never truly displaced labor, not really. In fact, a lot of times these technologies would create new markets. This is the first time we've had a technology that is not just changing how we do work, but it is actually able to perform that work, which means that unlike other times where new technologies might create new industries and open up new markets, we will actually find a shrinkage in markets, a shrinkage in the labor force, simply because the technology is now able, through its agentic abilities, to perform labor. So we're going to start to see a separation between humans and labor, which up until this point, we've always just taken them to be the same thing. Now we're going to actually recognize that labor can be performed through automation, flexible automation that AI is going to provide. And that means we're going to have to figure out what happens to the humans that used to provide this labor. How are we going to make sure that people are taken care of? These are the type of things that we have to start thinking of now and make sure that we have a plan that we can implement.
So now is the future.
Absolutely is.
So how do you feel in the last year, the acceleration of AI?
Well, so the more the technology advances, the more the technology advances, which is to say, it's building on its previous successes. And whereas before you had to be tuned in or following the news very closely to sort of see the impact, now even just a cursory glance at a headline will show you what AI is doing just in the last 12 months. And it's gotten so bad that we're actually seeing high-level AI researchers at some of these large companies, at the Anthropics, at Google, at OpenAI, literally leaving their positions in these companies, oftentimes citing concerns about the pace with which this technology is being developed and the seeming lack of concern for how this technology can actually cause harm in society. So a lot of these engineers who, for their own reasons, might have some sort of concern about how this technology can impact society and humanity, seeing that they're now misaligned with their companies, they've actually been stepping away. So this to me is a huge warning flag that this technology, at the pace at which it is developing, the impact that it can have in society, if it's causing people who work in these companies to walk away, that is something that we should be paying attention to.
Oh, that's very important. So we have young people, and they're kind of afraid of AI. And the reason why they're afraid of AI because it's unknown.
Yeah.
What can we tell them?
So, in a way, the younger generation is, in some ways, they're more equipped to deal with these sudden shifts. Maybe it's just the pliability of the brain, versus perhaps older generations where we perhaps are already set in a certain ways or expect society to operate a certain way. So we're the ones where this shift is going to have a greater impact. My concern for young folks, however, is that the changes that we're seeing and the rate of change, it may be that the promises that were made to them are on the verge of being broken. This idea of you study, you work hard, you go to college, you graduate, and you'll be able to get a job in this sector or that sector. It's very possible that in a couple of years, the disruption that we're going to see in the job market may mean that those jobs are not available. It means that automation and AI are going to be able to fill so many roles that we're really going to have to rethink what it means to be productive in this society. Let's take as an example. So there's this company, Boston Dynamics. 20 years ago, they started to work on, just robots, for want of a better term, humanoid robots eventually. And they spent literally 2 decades working on and trying to perfect the algorithms and the programs that allow these humanoid robots to operate. Just in the last few years, they replaced, or should I say, augmented their approach by introducing artificial intelligence into these systems. And the advancements that these humanoid robots have made just in the past few months would shock you. They're now testing these humanoid robots in industry. They're bringing them to factories to actually have them learn and train more on certain types of jobs. So this means, whereas before we were thinking, okay, AI is going to impact white-collar jobs. If you're sitting at a computer, then perhaps your job is at risk unless there's some creativity aspect that you bring to it. But now we see that blue-collar jobs are also at risk. As these humanoid robots become cheaper in costs, once we have these machines, once companies can acquire them for the cost or less than it would cost to have employees with healthcare and retirement and all of these other things, all these other costs, when it becomes more cost effective for a company to take these robots on board, then now you're seeing blue collar jobs, warehouse jobs, all of these jobs are now going to be lost as well. So this is really an interesting time. It means that we have to start to rethink how society operates, how we take care of our citizens. So for example, one of the things I've mentioned in the past that I am in support of is something called a universal basic income. This is an idea that is very old. This is not something new, but it's not all that popular in certain spaces because people hear universal basic income and they start to think these pejorative terms, like they think welfare, or they think that, oh, this is for people who don't want to get a job. But we're not going to have a society where the jobs may not exist. And you're going to have companies whose profitability will be retained or increased through their use of automation. It means we're going to have to revisit how we look at taxation. So companies right now basically have their labor taxed. You get up, you go to your job, and then the federal government takes 25, 30% from your paycheck. But as the labor market shrinks, that share, there is no paycheck for that 25% to be pulled from. But if the companies are still producing, it means we now have to start to look at the companies and tax production and output and use that taxation to fund a universal basic income so that we at the very least, we're protecting the most vulnerable among us. But by and large, we're just going to have to make sure that society and everyone in it is taken care of.
So with those facts, what do you expect in the near future for our society with AI?
Huge disruption. Again, at a much faster rate than I think a lot of people would have anticipated. I've been in the room where these systems were being built and tested and used for many years, and even I am surprised at the rate at which we are developing this technology. I want people to have a full appreciation of this. The modality that we all use to engage with these generative AI systems, the chatbot, the interface, is 5, maybe 10% of the capabilities of these systems. The real power in a lot of these systems lies in their agentic capabilities, their ability to act in the world, which is not something we see if we're just using a chatbot. Once these systems start to be used by companies and they're being connected to their networks and they're being given access to all of their data, this is where we're going to actually see the full capabilities of the technology. Even if it were to not improve more than it is today, the disruptions that we can expect will be huge. But it's not going to stick to where it is today. This technology is being enhanced as we speak. I mentioned last time we spoke about something called a superintelligence or artificial superintelligence. Again, even without achieving that, the fact that that is the target can tell us that we can expect to see exponential improvements in this technology in the near future. So this is something that a lot of these companies, they're hoping to deliver this technology by the end of this decade, if not in the next 10 years. So, it's hard to put a finger on where we ultimately land, but we do know that there will be huge change and that we should be prepared for that.
So we have students, and you taught the students, I taught the students, and they're confused and they have a lot of questions about AI.
Yeah.
And a lot of it comes from their parents who are stuck in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and 80s. What can we say to them to help them out?
We don't have good answers, if I'm being honest, right? We could, if we're just trying to comfort people, then we could spin any tale we would like. But there's a reality here. And the reality is that this is the most transformative and disruptive technology we have ever seen. This is, imagine if 200 years ago, the intercontinental train system and the interstate highway and all the vehicles and everything else that we now see today. Imagine if that was developed 200 years ago in the space of 2 to 5 years. Imagine the disruption that would have taken place. That's what we're seeing with artificial intelligence. Things that would usually take decades, if not hundreds of years, to fully be deployed. We're now seeing these leaps and bounds happening every 6 months. So there isn't really truly a comforting narrative. In fact, any real exploration or any deep dive we need to do in this technology needs to be focused on what are the potential harms of this technology. There's this broad problem in artificial intelligence called the alignment problem, which is unsolved. And the alignment problem basically says, how can we ensure that the goals and objectives of an artificial intelligence system is in line with the goals and objectives of the users of that system, or broadly, humanity's goals and objectives? How can we ensure that the system is operating in a manner that is safe and will not harm its users? This is an unsolved problem, if only because we are unable to guarantee certain types of behavior. And right now, we lack the ability to examine the AI when it is in operation to know exactly what its state is or to know what it's thinking. So when the AI operates at a certain level, we hope it's doing what we would like it to do, but we truly don't know. And the alignment problem can manifest in a couple of different ways. The simple version of this is one where the AI wants to do what you ask it to do, but the steps it takes to accomplish it, it's unaware that it should not take those steps, right? So the example I can use is, if I ask you to lend me $100, you might reach into your pocket, or you might transfer it from your bank account, or you might do something to give it to me. If I ask an AI to give me $100, it might go rob a bank, because it doesn't know that robbing a bank, stealing the money it is out of sync with this idea, this moral model that you and I possess. And if I tell it, well, don't rob a bank, okay, then it will rob an orphanage. And you say, well, don't steal, okay, then it sets up a Ponzi scheme. It can do anything simply to achieve the goal because it's misaligned. That's the simple version. The stronger version, the harder version, is one where the AI just doesn't want to do what you ask it to do. And that's where this problem of misalignment becomes a much bigger concern when we start to look at artificial general intelligence and artificial superintelligence. If these technologies were to ever be realized and we have not solved the alignment problem, then the concern is this technology might literally be an extinction level event for us, for humanity.
That's what most people are afraid of.
That's what most people should be afraid of. It for decades before, if not hundreds of years, this was science fiction. This was storytelling, but we're actually seeing it now. Companies want to build artificial general intelligence. They want to build artificial superintelligence. And yet there's a recognition amongst all researchers involved that the alignment problem is unsolved. And many people are concerned that it is unsolvable, at least with the current architectures that we have for AI. There's a somewhat scary statistic out there that says about 10 to 20% of researchers, or people in the field, believe that if we can achieve ASI, artificial superintelligence, and that ASI may and will be misaligned and therefore lead to some cataclysmic event. 10 to 20%. Now, that is a unsatisfactorily large number. If I were to say to you that the next plane you get, there's a 1 in 10, a 1 in 100 chance, not even 1 in 100, let us say, I say 1 in 10,000 chance that the next plane you get on will fall out of the sky, you would never fly again, because there are 100,000 planes that fly around the world every day. A 1 in 10,000 chance means, on average, 10 planes would fall out of the sky every day. By the time that second plane fell out of the sky, every government around the world would ground every plane. It would come to a screeching halt. And that is a 1 in 10,000 chance. So when you have a 10 to 20% of researchers who are in the field saying this is likely, we should expect our governments to act accordingly and say, well, this is not something that we can take a risk on. So we need to either pause, halt, or at least apply more responsibility to how we do this type of research. We need to treat it the same way we treat nuclear weapons, where we have international treaties, where we have labs that people can examine. But right now, what we have are a bunch of labs in the United States, a bunch of labs in China, all working towards this, not necessarily sharing information. Yes, they're academic journals and they're going to conferences and they're publishing, but we don't know what they're not talking about. We don't know what they're not publishing. We don't know what the state of the art is. And they're all working towards this technology, but a lot of society, and certainly people in Congress and people in government, are not paying any attention to this, and that's dangerous.
And that's unfortunate, because I've seen the technology that the Chinese are using, and they actually have humanoid robots who are programmed, who could do flips, run fast, 40 miles an hour, and basically, if you went military, you'd be fighting the robots.
All right, and these things are learning, right? Because they're again, all of these machines now, their brains are now artificial intelligence. They're being trained, which means that, you know, for decades past, automation would mean you get one machine that does one thing. right? Look at the way that motor vehicles are assembled. You know, you have the robotic arm and it moves around and everything needs to be in exactly the right position or the whole thing falls apart. This is a complete 180. Now we have machines that are able to operate in a dynamic world where things are moving, where things are changing because they're learning. So they're not fixed to any one thing. The same way that a military might end up using these, it's the same way companies will end up using these. Because now it makes sense, once the costs are reasonable, to bring in these autonomous or these humanoid systems, because you can now have them do any type of job because they're able to learn how to perform them and then do them well, and if not do them better than a human could, ultimately. If not with the technology today, then it's certainly the technology in 5 years or the technology in 10 years. They're not slowing down the development, it's increasing. So this is absolutely a concern that we should have.
Well, I think we do have a concern because with my coming up, we competed with the calculators.
Yeah.
And what we found out about that competition, that I got tired. And the calculator had batteries, and it kept going.
Yeah.
So that's the same thing with the robots.
Yeah.
And the AI. What do you think is most important that we should share with the young people in this movement with the AI? Because they are going to be, it's in their community already. They just don't realize it, but they have to compete with them.
They will have to compete. I believe, and I guess let's try to be optimistic. Recognize right from the get-go that at the very least we're entering a world where we will have these automated systems, these AI systems, as in the worst case assistants and tools, and they should learn and understand how their particular job or in their particular field, these tools can be used to enhance their effectiveness, enhance their whatever it is that their job entails. So this is something that they should absolutely be doing. We'd like to think, certainly, you know, in my classroom and in others, where the teachers are already thinking like this, and where it makes sense, we're introducing artificial intelligence. We're showing them how this can augment their tasks, and this is to ensure that they're prepared when they leave and they go into industry. Like, this is what the world will look like. And then they have to be dynamic. They have to be able to pivot, because even as we're introducing it as instructors, as teachers, it's moving much faster than even we can keep up with. So the onus does fall to the young folks, the ones being born into this, the ones transitioning from academia into industry. They do need to be aware and to keep abreast of what's happening, perhaps a lot more than the rest of us, so that they can adapt and they can pivot as quickly as they need to. But again, I think broadly this is a societal question. It's not the responsibility of any individual. We have to collectively make a determination of what this technology means for us, what we are willing to delegate to it, what we're willing to hand over, and what that means for the rest of us. So it's a much harder, much larger conversation.
Okay, so yeah, it is a much longer conversation because we're in the middle of the ocean and we're trying to swim because that's how much AI is on us.
Right.
So how do you feel about the competition? Because you are trying to get our community to hear what you're saying.
Right.
So how do you feel about your competition running for Congress?
It is not my intention to besmirch anyone. I can only say this. When I look at the race, when I'm listening to other candidates speak at candidate forums, it's hard for me to know that if I were to show you the transcript of a conversation that they may have, or a question and a series of answers, it would be hard for you to tell if this was a conversation that happened last week or a conversation that happened 20 years ago. Because they're still focused on the same set of problems, and they're still bringing the same type of solutions. So in a broad sense, there seems to be no innovation. But putting that aside, there seems to be no vision. No one is having a conversation at any level in this race. No other candidate is talking about how society is about to change. People have asked me, why am I running? And, you know, they expect me to say, well, I felt a calling, or I want to help my fellow man. And all of those things are there. But the reason I'm running is I am afraid. I am fearful that as we see our society transition brought on by artificial intelligence, we're going to see the same inaction that Congress has shown for the last 30 years when it comes to technological development. And we're going to see ignorance filling the void and trying to cope with something so complicated that even people who are in the field have a hard time understanding and keeping up. The stakes are too large. In any other situation, at any other time, I would not be in this race. I am running because we are going to need scientists, we're going to need computer scientists in Congress to regulate and legislate for this technology. This has nothing to do with my own feel or need to be in the halls of Congress. This was never something that I had intended to do. I love being a professor. I love being an academic. I love the job that I have now, and I assumed I would have been doing this until the day I retire. 18, 20 months ago, I decided, looking at the landscape, looking out, I saw the trajectory of this technology, and I recognized then that we needed something had to change. Something had to change. We needed people who would be able to legislate. And when I look today, I realize just how short-sighted I was even then, because of the rate of change of this technology. So how I see the competition, I think they're unprepared. I think they're well-intentioned, but they're not ready for this problem. We're going to need not just me, but a cadre of new representatives in Congress across the country who are up to this challenge, who can look at this technology, face it down and say, here's how we're going to regulate it, here's how we're going to fix it. The tech companies, they're already positioned. We saw this from the second inauguration of Trump, where right on the dais, right alongside him were the CEOs of the top tech companies. We see it playing out in the economy right now. The largest company in the world is NVIDIA at $4 or $5 trillion, and all the other tech companies are right behind it. They're dumping so much capital expenditure into the development of AI. AI is right now the only thing holding up the stock market. Like, we're seeing all the signs in front of us. We don't need to guess or pretend. The fact that none of the other candidates are even acknowledging this, much less speaking to it, is just political malpractice on its face. But it should be a red flag to any voter who cares about where the society is heading, who cares about the future of their children, or who cares about how their elderly parents are going to be cared for. There is no policy debate that is not also a policy debate about artificial intelligence. And if you don't get that, you should not be in this race.
That's the opinion of Dr. Karl Morriss. And he's trying to put in position for all of us to hear the importance of living in this world with artificial intelligence. He's a scientist. I'm Jay Bagley. I run Skylar Motion Incorporated, which is drones, which is AI. I also have RunLink Stem Cell, which is AI, and I'm presenting it to the kids. So I'm part of your march, and I support what you do. And for those of you who may not understand what we've been talking about, play it again. Thank you, Dr. Karl Morriss. It's a pleasure. And maybe we could meet again one day.
I would like that.
And good luck in your campaign.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.